Sergeant, I want you to dive into the tub. When you do, pull the bomb blanket down over your head. This is a good, old-fashioned cast-iron tub. It'll withstand a hell of a blast.
I can't do it.
Actors Mel Gibson and Danny Glover recently reunited in Philadelphia at Fan Expo, and their appearance instantly reignited conversations about a possible Lethal Weapon 5. It's been a long time coming, and although the sequel has been in limbo for years, Gibson offered some meaningful updates that fans have been hoping to hear, even if they come with a few frustrations. During the event, Gibson gave an interview on May 17, 2025 with Screen Rant, where he opened up about the state of the project. And while the good news is that there is a script, one that Gibson believes is incredibly strong, the not-so-great news is that the studio seemed to be struggling to move it forward. I sat down with a writer and we did 2 or 3 drafts of screenplays, Gibson shared, and it came out pretty good. In fact, I think it's the best of all of them. He even noted that the script was not only fun, but also emotionally rich, which sounds promising. But then came the roadblock. For some reason, the studios are having a lot of problems. I don't know what the deal is, I'm not sure what the problem is, but it is a really good screenplay. So while the creative work appears to be in place, something behind the scenes is slowing things down. This isn't the first time Gibson has brought up the challenges either. Back in September at a fan event in Utah, he said something similar. That the script had been written, that it's meaningful and powerful, and that he'd taken over after the late director Richard Donner began working on it before his passing. Gibson had promised Donner that he'd see Lethal Weapon 5 through, which makes this project personal for him in a big way. Gibson and Glover's recent appearance came 38 years after the original Lethal Weapon was released in 1987, which makes the timing of this update feel even more significant. Glover is now 78 and Gibson is 69, but that didn't stop them from sharing the stage and having fun with fans. In fact, according to the New York Post, Glover tried to recreate the film's iconic handshake moment with Gibson, although it ended up becoming more of a casual fist bump. Interestingly, this wasn't even their only reunion this year. Photos show the two actors together at another fan expo in Orlando, Florida, back in February. That ongoing camaraderie is heartening for longtime fans because it suggests that both stars are still invested and ready to return, if the opportunity finally becomes real. They weren't alone at the Philly event either. A bunch of other big names showed up, including John Cena, Christopher Lloyd, Helen Hunt, Priscilla Presley, William Shatner, and Dolph Lundgren. It was a full house of stars and nostalgia, and Gibson and Glover fit right in, especially with Lethal Weapon buzz still swirling. As for what's holding things up, that part remains unclear. Gibson has emphasized multiple times that he thinks the script is top tier, arguably the strongest of the series. So it's not a matter of creative confidence. In fact, his remarks during the Utah event echoed this exact sentiment. "I think it's the best one of the whole series," he said, before acknowledging again that for reasons he can't explain, it just won't get made. Part of the challenge might be that Lethal Weapon isn't intellectual property that Gibson owns. So even though he's deeply involved creatively, especially after stepping in to direct following Donner's death, the final green light still rests with studio executives. That adds a layer of unpredictability to the process, especially if the studio has concerns about timing, cost, or direction. It's not just Lethal Weapon 5 that's been on Gibson's plate either. His other major passion project, The Passion of the Christ Resurrection, is also in development. In that case, he does have more creative control, but even then progress has been slow. While reports suggest that Gibson has started scouting locations for the Passion sequel, it's still very much in its early stages. That film, tentatively titled The Passion of the Christ Resurrection Part 1, will pick up shortly after the crucifixion of Jesus and focus on the resurrection. Jim Caviezel, who portrayed Jesus in the original film, is expected to return, although the fact that it's been 20 years since the first movie means age could become a hurdle. Caviezel would likely need digital de-aging, similar to what we've seen in films like Indiana Jones 5, to convincingly play Jesus again in flashback sequences. But getting back to Lethal Weapon 5, what does all of this mean for its future? Despite the hang-ups, Gibson's tone remains upbeat. He hasn't abandoned the film or lost faith in its potential. He still believes it can be made, and not just as a nostalgic cash-in, but as a meaningful continuation of a series that shaped his career, and if you ask fans, there's a real appetite for one last ride with Riggs and Murtaugh. There's also the fact that the Lethal Weapon brand still holds weight. The original 4 films pulled in solid box office numbers, and they've remained popular through home video, streaming, and even the short-lived Lethal Weapon TV series. The franchise has always combined heart, humor, and explosive action, and even though both stars have aged, that's part of the appeal now. Seeing these characters older, wiser, and dealing with a new set of challenges could make for a compelling final chapter. At this point, it's not just about car chases and shootouts. A 5th film could explore legacy in a deeper way. Maybe it brings back the old dynamic between Riggs and Murtaugh, but also introduces a new generation. That kind of passing the torch story has worked well for other franchises, so why not here? Another glimmer of hope came when screenwriter Jez Butterworth was brought on board. Known for his sharp writing, Butterworth's involvement signals that the studio is still trying to make this work, even if things are moving slowly. And while Mel Gibson's schedule is packed, especially with his commitment to the Passion sequel, it doesn't mean Lethal Weapon 5 is off the table. It just might take more time. So, is it frustrating that the project hasn't taken off yet? Definitely. But all signs still point toward possibility rather than cancellation. Gibson seems genuinely proud of the work that's been done so far, and his continued public support shows he hasn't walked away. Revisiting old franchises always carries a risk, especially when the original director is no longer around and the cast is much older. But Gibson has proved himself behind the camera, and if there's anyone who could bring the heart of Lethal Weapon back to life, it's him. The key will be capturing that same spark that made the originals work while acknowledging the years that have passed. And let's be honest, fans want to see this happen. Whether it's for nostalgia, closure, or the chance to see Glover once again mutter, "I'm too old for this" one last time, the demand is there. In the end, the hope is that both projects, Lethal Weapon 5 and The Passion of the Christ Resurrection, will move forward, even if the paths aren't smooth. Gibson might be facing obstacles from studios and timelines, but his creative drive hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, this could be the start of a new chapter for him, both as a filmmaker and an actor. He's overdue for a creative resurgence, and these films might just be the ones to spark it. So while there may not be a release date on the calendar just yet, the energy is still there. It's just a matter of when, not if, these long-awaited stories finally get their moment. And when they do, fans will be ready. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.